friends. I'm Joe Iconis.
And I'm Jennifer Ashley Tepper. Today we're going to be talking about a very special song called 64, which was inspired by a street in New York City, namely 64th Street.
It's a time-traveling song, and it's sung by the incredible Alan H. Green and George Salazar and Jose Restrepo, and we got a lot to say about it.
Hopefully you'll enjoy a Joe Iconis trio, because that's a rarity.
Yeah, it's like my Fugue for Tin Horns, but different.
Yeah.
Or the original Helen Hayes, back when things were better in many ways. I walk toward Lincoln Center now, just like I did when I was a kid.
So 64
64
is in a special genre of songs, just like the genre of songs that are people's names, but it's a number.
Just a number.
Just like 52.
Yeah, and 64 refers to the street, 64th Street in Manhattan, New York City, Earth.
I love 64th Street. I love all the streets in Manhattan. As a theater historian, this is like such a special song because you dive into some theater history here.
I do, yeah. The song is one that I wrote for an event that I think Lonnie Price organized it, right? And it was songs about Lincoln Center. And
it was performed at that like atrium area where like sort of TKTS used to have a location at Lincoln Center there.
Yeah.
And then Lonnie Price was kind of putting together this song cycling night.
And so I wrote this tune, and I don't even remember how I started this song. Like, it was one of those songs that I felt like I just like fell into a rabbit hole, and I just sort of decided what I wanted to write when I was like in the song. You know, it wasn't a song that I kind of mapped out, which is something that I do usually. This one was like I had to get into it, and then I realized what the song was about, and then I just kept getting myself like deeper and deeper into it, and I felt like I was like working stuff out as I was writing it. But the impetus for the song was this idea, this image of Raul Julia walking to a rehearsal like on the Lincoln Center campus in the 70s, and I love Lincoln Center. It's like, you know, if I had to give a list of my favorite places in New York City, it would definitely be very close to the top. And I have always, I've always loved the area. I love the idea of it. Aesthetically, I like how it looks. It really makes me think about, the 70s and a different time in New York. And I realized that Lincoln Center, it ignites this nostalgia in me. And so I started writing the song, sort of tapping into that, this idea of this place igniting this nostalgia in me for a time that I was not alive for. This nostalgia for this, like the old days. And this is this magical place. And it makes me think like, it was, even more magical back then. And because then I start to think, when I think about, Raul Julia, just how cool this like actor's actor, this guy going to do these shows in Lincoln Center and these legendary productions and the diner from Annie Hall on the corner where PJ Clark's is, and it just takes me back to another time. And so then as I started writing that, then I was like, maybe this song is about how things aren't as good now as they used to be. Then the deeper I got into that, the more, I got interested in the idea of Lincoln Center being built in the 60s and how it, decimated San Juan Hill. It decimated the neighborhood that was there. And this idea of like this place that has nothing but sort of positive connotations to me, this place that feels so magical and also conjures up this nostalgia for an era that I wasn't there for, means something so different to to a great many people.
Yeah.
And this idea of like, if I actually was my age now in the 70s when Raul Julia was heading to rehearsal in the fall, how would I feel about this area? Would I feel like, oh, this is a great place where I can go and do my art? Or would I feel conflicted about it? And how did Raul Julia feel about it? And so that's sort of what started the kind of like Russian nesting doll.
It is. It's a matryoshka.
Yeah.
This song, it is what it's
that's
called. Yeah.
Say it again.
Matryoshka.
Matryoshka.
I am Russian. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that is what it's called. It makes me think so much about when I was writing the Marquee Theater chapter of my Untold Stories of Broadway books, I really started gaining perspectives similar to 64 on, for people of a certain generation, the Marquee Theater is like, how dare they have knocked down those 5 Broadway houses to build the Marquee? And that theater is not my favorite. And how evil that we put this hotel up where all these theaters used to be. And for people of another generation, it's like, oh my God, the Marquee where I saw the early modern Millie. And you talk to people of a younger generation and they don't have any memory of, a negative connotation of that building. To them, it's like, oh my God, I saw Peter Pan there. So it is something that in New York, I think, is actually not explored that much of. There's a sort of black and white version of older stuff was better, but there's not a black and white stuff of that older thing that was better also knocked down something that another generation cared about. And that's just what the city does. I mean, it's like this song goes deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole.
Yeah. And the whole idea of it is kind of, it's messy and it's, I mean, as the song, says, nostalgia is so complex. If you think about it. But yeah, I mean, it's like that, especially with theaters, but with anything in New York City, anything that's here knocked down something else. And I always just think of you could keep going back and back and back and back and back until you get to, a one angry cockroach that's they knocked down my nest.
Yes.
The stupid Empire State Building. There's always going to be some creature that you have displaced in order to make something else. And so, and so the song is that. And at the end of the song, it repeats. This kind of play out of the song is real, real long, and it's long because in my mind, I think the song could just play forever, and you could keep hopping back, and obviously the last person we hear from during the play out is Jose Ferrer, talking about the hippodrome and all of that, but it's you could keep just back, and never ending until you get to dinosaurs or something.
Mad props to you for the references here, because I think the first time I heard Jose Ferrer and Hippodrome and Vanderbilt and the references are so correct and so things that you might have to look up, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly what this person would have been singing about. And I mean, I just freaked out when you wrote that. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but crazily enough, the place where this was first performed, the Atrium at Lincoln Center that I was talking about, that's on the footprint of a Broadway theater, the Harkness, that is where the Robert Bridegroom was originally there. And it was a very short-lived Broadway theater. I think it was knocked down in I think the late 70s, but that's so crazy.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
Harkness was there.
Sort of on that footprint.
Yeah. See, and my song was born there, where the Harkness died.
This also reminds me of when our favorite bar across from 54 Below, Characters, was getting the axe during the pandemic, and I was going down the 64 style rabbit hole about it, and I was like, oh, this was once a farm called Cosine's Farm in the 1700s, and they must have been real mad when it was made into, it's New York City. This is such a New York City song. It also, I think this song obviously was written long before the Tony Kushner version of the West Side Story movie, but specifically Lincoln Center being created on top of this community that was decimated is also something that's depicted there, which is so interesting because I feel like a reference point that a lot of people now have for it is West Side Story. That's what that area used to be like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very wild. And the other thing that the song I think touches on is this idea of, everyone is always talking about how New York is dead, how New York is dead, and also the theater. Everyone's always talking about, myself included, it used to be so much better. It used to be so much better. And something that always thrills me is reading that sentence even, the theater used to be better, for in hundreds of years
Sure.
of written word. Like it's just something that people have always said in the golden age of whatever.
I totally remember the first time I read like Richard Rodgers telling a story from when he was in his 20s and people were saying that to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's just a great circle.
Yeah, always.
It's a strange loop.
Always.
I also, this song I think gives a fresh perspective to like, similarly, there's someone that's going to be nostalgic about things that are happening now that to us are just like, oh yeah, walk in a rehearsal in the fall.
Yeah.
And at some point, someone is going to look back on that and be like, oh, the days when like, they were walking from Open Jar Studios where we're recording right now. Like we're living it. And so like, even the times when you don't feel like, oh, the show I'm working on is not my favorite experience for XYZ reason, or like this was a bad day of rehearsal or whatever it is. We don't know if Raul Julia was like, having food poisoning when he was walking to rehearsal. It's like the bad stuff sometimes gets erased from history and you kind of remember the good stuff, and someone will be doing that about our generation.
Yeah. It's, to me, also when I was writing it, I wanted to write not the rebuttal, but just the different perspective on the, on the look around, how lucky we are to be alive right now. It's when they both sing in the song, it must have been the only good time to be alive in the city at all. It's like that's the opposite of the idea of like of the Schuyler sisters being like this is it and it's like because it's like it's looking back. It's not really appreciating what is around you or being honest about what is around you. It's just this sense of like, oh, it used to be. It used to be so much better. And I do just have to say the performances of Alan H. Green and George Salazar and Jose Restrepo, like, come on.
Oh my God.
Incredible.
This, I have to say, I don't have a favorite song on the album. I really do feel like they're all special, different reasons, but this was the first song that I rushed to like play again. And it might also be because Alan's performed so much of your work before, but this was a new song for Alan on the album. So it wasn't like, oh, we've heard Alan do this a million times in concert. And him recording it was so incredible. And I just like was dying to hear him sing it again. And George and Jose.
I mean, all of them. And it's with Alan, something that's so special is that it's just so, his vocal performance, in addition to being very thrilling vocally, it's thrilling because it's so genuine and so earnest, and it's like he's singing about this nostalgia as if it was like an ex-lover. It's like there's real romance in the way that he's singing, and I think he does that with his commitment and his literal vocal performance in a way that it elevates and informs the words. It's like something that words themselves could never do. His absolute passion about this is something that is really incredible. And again, something like, because he's so wonderful, he just got, there was never like, how should I sing this? What should I be doing? He was just like, oh, this is what this is. And it's like, yes, that's exactly what it is. This isn't something, you're not supposed to be like,
imitating him or something.
Like being like a brainiac.
Sure.
And then, George doing, playing Raul Julia in the song, we talked about if he should do like straight up impression or like what should he do, and so he's sort of doing a light Raul Julia, inflection or something, but also like attacking it with the same passion and romance, and it's like so exciting. I think when you hear the two of them, the sort of like present in quotation mark fingers and past in quotation mark fingers, go at it together, it sounds like a love song. It sounds like a sort of creamy 70s love song. I'm just so happy with it. And then Jose Restrepo, who recorded Jose Restrepo. He lives in LA, and so he was sort of the last piece of the puzzle. And like the three of them together, it's just really, I'm really, really proud of it. And I also have to say, I love the arrangement of the song so much. Charlie Rosen, his string arrangement is just so gorgeous, and so dangerously nostalgic. And that's, part of it, where it's like I wanted it to sound like, like 70s radio. And then it wanted it to feel sumptuous and feel like warm and feel like, this is nothing but good. This looking back and sort of living in the past. Even
the
though it's at
musicians
odds,
really do kill it on this track.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And this was, we did all the strings in one day and all the horns in one day. And for this tune, this was the last one. And this was one where we didn't know if we wanted strings on it. Mm-hmm. And there was it was less than 10 minutes left in the session. And we were just like, there's not gonna be any time to rehearse this, and Charlie was like, let's just give it to them, and whatever they can do, they'll do, and then if maybe we'll use like a part or two. And the string players got the charts, and they just played it down perfectly one time.
Yeah.
And and the song is 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
That's the problem with my song. It's like when you have 10 minutes, like you can just
You
go
can do
through
it
it, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And then it was perfect. And that's the take that's on the thing. And it was the last little thing that we recorded. And yeah, I just love it so much. And Ian Keggy just mixed it so expertly. And
it turned out great.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a question I should just remember to ask you once you've had like a couple drinks, and you're not going to answer it right now. But is there any other street that you feel like is next on your list of like you've done 52 and 64?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I got a couple in my mind.
I'm going to trick you into answering that for me some other time. But stay tuned.
I really do in the back of my mind have this fantasy of writing a song for every street in the theater district. Mm-hmm. I think that's the ultimate. It's the ultimate goal.
Street cycle. I mean, that's not what it would be called, but it's like, the play cycles where
Street
you write
cycle.
about.
Yeah.
I feel like 42 has sort of been written about obliquely in multiple songs of yours, but yeah, we'll see.
I can do it. I can do it again.
Yeah.
I've still got some song left in me.
Thank God. 64.
64. Hey. Thanks so much for listening or watching to my podcast. Do me a favor and go to wherever you just listen to or watch this thing and subscribe or like or give us a great rating or review, and then head to bpn.fm/album to find out even more information about this podcast, more ways to watch, more ways to listen, and check out my album. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Album Podcast is executive produced by Liz Armstrong, produced by Dori Berenstein, Alan Seals, Kim Garris, and the rest of the team at the Broadway Podcast Network. Be sure to visit bpn.fm/album for both audio and video versions of this podcast and to listen to Album.
Take me back, 'cause I know that life was better then. Take me back.